Welcome into WLOI, Loyola Radio, streaming online at WLOI.org and Campus TV channel 111.1. This is After the Whistle, Loyola's premier sports talk radio show, airing every Monday and Friday from 3 to 4 on Mondays and 1 to 2 on Fridays. Welcome into a show here on this fine Monday afternoon here in Baltimore. A little gloomy, cloudy skies, but it's nice here and warm on the inside. I am your host today, Jeffrey Bazzi, alongside my co-host, Jimmy Cody. Jimmy, how was your Thanksgiving break?
Well, Thanksgiving was good. I had a good time. Was glad to be home with my family, see my family, and then spend some time at home relaxing. That was kind of the best part, is I feel kind of recharged right now, so that's a plus. How about yourself? How was your Thanksgiving?
It was good. It was good to be home for a little bit. Nice to get a break once in a while, but it was nice to see some cousins and some family, some friends.
Yeah.
It's just good to catch up with some people that I haven't seen in a few months. So it was good to see them.
Yeah, now we're into the holiday season. Christmas music is officially allowed to be played, so you know that I'm going to be playing it.
Oh yeah.
All I Want for Christmas Is You has definitely been played on my phone in the past couple days, for sure. So yeah,
We have Spotify Wrapped coming up too.
yeah,
So
yeah, that's true. Always gotta see what everybody's listening to for the year. That's always a great
Yeah.
social media
Yeah.
day. But yeah, I mean, exciting NFL day. I thought, honestly, I'm gonna be honest with you. I was kind of impressed with a lot of teams, specifically on Thursday too. I kind of liked one team in particular, the Cowboys. I mean, they stood out to me. I was just amazed by their offense.
well, yeah, just as a backdrop, I was gonna say there was an exciting slate yesterday, but we're gonna start with Thursday. Just I feel like we have to talk about those games on Thursday because I felt like coming in, the slate was really good on paper. I felt like for the first time in a while, the Thanksgiving games, at least coming into the games themselves, were
Spectacular.
really good
All
matchups.
three. All
But
three.
you mentioned the Cowboys, and I agree. They definitely looked like they're kind of rounding into form a little bit. They beat the Giants, for those who don't know. I think it was 28-20.
Yeah, the Giants got that last minute touchdown, but that was the only points they had in the second half, so kind of did them a favor.
Yeah, and I felt like it was a game that the Cowboys coming in were favored. I felt like a lot of people would pick them to win, and they didn't really look the part early on. I felt like the Giants kind of took it to them. I'm not saying the Cowboys didn't look great, but obviously Dak Prescott threw that interception early on,
He had two turnovers.
and then he had that other turnover.
So once he stopped the turnovers, I felt like that was kind of the way the Cowboys were able to finally get into the game and really start beating the Giants. But you know what else was a little disappointing? I mean, the Giants were moving the ball easily at the beginning of the game, which I think was good for the Giants. The problem was, as the game went on, I felt like, I don't want to say the Giants were outcoached, but I felt like the Cowboys made some really good adjustments, especially when they were using Micah Parsons. They just absolutely manipulated the Giants' offensive line, and an offensive line that's a little banged up. I understand that. But at the end of the day, sometimes it doesn't really matter who's out there. Sometimes guys are just beasts, and Micah Parsons took over that game. And so did the Cowboys D-line.
Yeah, and the other thing that they're starting to do more, speaking of adjustments, is giving the ball to Tony Pollard. Finally. I mean, we both said this on this show that they need to do that more.
But he wasn't even the leading rusher. Like, honestly, Zeke had a pretty good game. He contributed 92 yards and a touchdown, and he was actually averaging more.
He was probably the better back in that game. I just think moving forward, if you're using Zeke in specialty situations, maybe third down or goal line, I think that's where he can really thrive. Because clearly
he's a good pass blocker, honestly. I will say that's something he's really underrated at. And I think that's, if I had to point to one real reason why I think he gets a lot of the playing time that people expect Pollard to get, I think it's because he's so valuable in other areas. It's true also, though, that while Zeke may be a good pass blocker, I would say Pollard is probably better in space. And he also just seems a little bit quicker, too. Like, he just has that more of that big play. And also, too, when I watch them, maybe you think this, too, I just feel like Pollard seems to get more out of his plays than Zeke does with his.
Yeah, I feel like every time Pollard has the ball, he's going for at least 10 yards. I don't know.
It's just that I feel like I'll see a hole that has nothing, and they'll still get like 6 yards. And then with Zeke, I'll see a thing that it looks like you could drive a truck through. And he's only getting like 10 yards, and you're like, all right, like obviously you're not going to complain about 10 yards, but he's not old Zeke. He doesn't have that burst of like speed that he had. Like when I always think of Zeke, I always think of when he was on OSU and they had that long run against Alabama to seal it. He was so fast. Oh my God, he just flew away from everybody, but he's not that guy anymore.
No, he still has the strength, but the speed is definitely long gone.
But honestly, in terms of 1-2 punches in the NFL, it's up there with honestly anybody.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, I mean it's a great running team.
And then on the flip side, speaking of running backs, Saquon did not
Yeah.
have a great day.
No, the Giants offense struggled to run the ball.
Yeah, and I would say at least how I viewed the game, I thought early on the Giants did a good job coming out and playing pretty well. I mean, they got an early lead at 13-7, I believe. I think that was the halftime score.
Yeah,
I think the key there was they had some chances to get closer to the end zone and potentially score touchdowns, but they settled for 2 field goals. They did have a touchdown in there, but I think the turning point was that 1 4th down when New York went for it and they didn't get it. I just felt like everything went downhill for them from there.
Yeah, I don't know if I would have went for that, honestly. I just didn't think it was worth it.
Now, I don't really remember where they were in the field. I'm not sure if they were near midfield or I forget where they were. I think they weren't in Dallas territory, right?
No, they were around midfield.
Yeah. I don't know. That's a tough one. And then you look at the play itself, it wasn't a bad play call because if Saquon catches the ball, it would have been a first down, but the throw could have been a little bit better. Was it catchable? Maybe it's a tough play.
Yeah, it was a tough play, but at the same oh, you're talking about the Saquon drop, obviously. They also only had 10 guys on the field for that play.
That too. I didn't even see that till the day after, and
Yeah,
I was
not
mesmerized.
not great. But as for the Cowboys, going forward, they are going to take on the Colts on Sunday Night Football this week. They're going to be about 9.5-point favorites. And as for the Giants, they have a huge game this week against the Commanders in East Rutherford. Giants aren't even favored at home, which surprises me.
Yeah, we were talking about it just before the show started. I can't believe that they're not favored. And I know that these teams are kind of even in terms of records, very similar. The way they play is kind of the same, similarities there. But yeah, home dogs to the
let's
Commanders.
talk about the Giants here for a second because we have not we've talked about them a lot, but I mean I kind of didn't realize how tough their remaining schedule is. I mean, there is a lot of decent football teams on here. You got Commanders twice, you got Cowboys. I'm sorry, never mind. Cowboys is done. You got Eagles twice and Commanders twice. So that's 4 division games or 2 division games, right? No, one.
No,
two.
you were right.
Yeah,
It's four division games.
Can't even count right now. I don't know what's going on. So they got 4 division games, and then their other games come against the Vikings and the Colts.
And we know how the Vikings are doing. They're having a pretty good year.
The Vikings on the road, mind you. And then, so honestly, this is
Even the Colts, they're not that great, but I don't know. Well, we'll see how they look tonight.
I know the
Monday
Giants
night,
have 7 wins, but I don't know if they get to 9.
like, do you think they're falling back to earth in the sense that they're kind of playing like the team we expected them to, or do you think it's just a little bit of a bump in the road?
I think it's a combination of things. I think they're really injured right now, and injuries have kind of affected them hard. I think they would beat the Colts 100% if they were injured, and honestly, I think they would be able to beat Washington if they're injured. Now they can still beat both those teams, but they're going to have their work cut out for them against the Eagles. The only thing I will say that I feel like works out for them is if they can at least just get healthy on the offensive line, they'll be able to run the ball against you guys, right? Because that's kind of their strength. That's kind of your weakness. Yeah, your weakness right now. So that's the one thing that kind of, works for them. But also, you know what else works for them, at least in those Commanders games, as well as with the Colts and the Vikings? All those teams play close games, and the Giants always find a way to seem to pull it out. So maybe that'll work to their advantage as well.
Yeah, and the other thing is they have 4 divisional games still in their schedule. So if they win 3 of the 4, even all 4, they could really put themselves back in contention. The only problem is they're already 0-2 in the division because they've lost both to the Cowboys.
Yeah, so
but the path is still there for a playoff berth. It's still there.
It definitely is. And the other game on Thanksgiving that was on during the day was the Bills and the Lions. I don't want to not mention it, but I thought this was a game the Lions were pretty competitive in. Just from my idea of what you know what I mean. Basically, the Bills once again to me just kind of always like sleepwalk through the game, and then they just wake up and eventually make it work. But this is not a good sign from this team.
No, and I watched parts of this game, but the parts that I watched, I just felt like Josh Allen wasn't sharp.
I agree with you. He's not sharp at all. I mean, I feel like every single week he makes at least one dumb interception.
Right.
And he did that again this week.
I honestly don't know if there's a main issue that you can point it all to, but he just doesn't look crisp. Listen, he can get outside the pocket and run. I mean, we saw that. He actually led the team rushing during that game, and I'm not sure that's a great thing moving forward, but I thought the Lions, this was a game that they could have had.
They could have.
They weren't really winning the game for the majority of the game. They took a brief lead in the fourth quarter,
You know what the problem
but
is?
they were always hanging
They
around.
mismanaged those timeouts at the end of the game. They left Buffalo with way too much time. Way too much time. That was a bad drive for the Lions. They should have been thinking
The
touchdown.
key thing for Buffalo too is they had their own timeouts too.
Yeah,
So
that-
that was smart of them to
Yeah.
still have those timeouts.
I would have tried to take more time off the clock, especially because you're already in field goal range. You know what I mean? You don't want to give the ball back. You want to go to overtime, especially if you're the team was playing but from behind, like the Lions were. So just a little bit of a coaching, I think, mistake on Dan Campbell's part.
And I guess credit to Josh Allen though during that last
Yeah,
drive.
it was a good drive.
He had 23 seconds, I think, to go basically, I don't know, 40, 50 yards to get in the field goal range. And he did it. He threw that bomb of a pass to
With a
Stephon
couple
Diggs.
seconds to spare.
Right. It gave me a little bit of Bills Chiefs vibes in the sense that not a lot of time left. They had to get in field goal range to get a chance to tie it or win it. And yeah, they came through. That was a big win for Buffalo
Yeah.
to keep pace with
Yeah,
the
they needed that.
Dolphins.
All right, and then really quickly, Patriots Vikings. I got to talk about the Hunter Henry thing because how is that not a catch? How is that not a catch? His hand is underneath the ball. He's leaning for the end zone. He has his hand underneath the
Yeah, the
ball,
ball's clearly
and it's
breaking
over
the
the plane.
plane. Yeah.
It's over the plane. It just because it's on the ground, and then like he already leaned forward with it. You know what I mean? That's what I don't understand.
We've seen this.
I thought the tax got completely screwed on.
Yeah, we've seen this with Jesse James the one year, even Zach Ertz in the Super Bowl. That was a similar play. I thought it was very clear that his hand, like you said, was under the ball. I think the one picture showed it. I'm not sure if the officials saw that during the review,
I
but
mean, I guess
they
not.
clearly missed something. The
Yeah.
replay center clearly missed something too.
And listen, I didn't even think this was a game that the Vikings looked that great in. I thought they made the plays that they had to, but I thought this story was more so about the Patriots' mistakes. I mean, especially on special teams, kickoff return for a touchdown, a penalty on a punt, roughing the punter that ended up leading into a touchdown. And so you take those plays that resulted in 14 points and you combine that with a loss of Henry's going from 7 to 3. I mean, that's a lot of points left out there on the field for a team who lost by one possession. And I thought Mac Jones played really well too. I want to say that. I thought that was his best game of the season.
Yeah, and it's interesting too because a lot of the times with the Patriots this year, the offense has kind of been the question mark. It hasn't really been the thing that showed up on a consistent basis, but it's just so weird how they lost this game because they lost the game basically from the units that usually do well, like the defense and the special teams. The defense was definitely not themselves. And then, like you said, they gave up that long kick return. I think it was a 97-yard kick return to Minnesota. And then they ended up losing late when they had that fourth down that they almost got actually from Nelson Aguilar. But yeah, good day for the offense. The defense unfortunately did not hold up its end there. So it's a tough one though for New England because it's definitely a game that they could have had. It would have been a nice game for them to steal. You talk about games that teams like to steal, that could have been one they could have stolen.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Jeff. That was a game that they just didn't have it in. All right, let's move on to the 1 p.m. Sunday slate. I'm sure there's a lot that we want to talk about there. Let's start off with the Buccaneers and Browns because honestly, like I was kind of impressed with the Browns. I mean, that was like a kind of turning point win for them. Now they're getting Deshaun Watson back. I mean, what do you think about their hopes for the rest of the season?
So it's obviously good news that they're getting Watson back because we know how much of a talent he is. It's just realistically, if they can make a run, I don't know because their record is really not that great. They're 4-7, and I'm looking at their schedule here. I'm just trying to load it up on my phone. They do have some games that they can win. I mean, next week down in Houston, I feel like that's a game they should win. And they've got the Bengals and the Ravens and the Saints, the Commanders and Steelers. So there is a little bit of a path there. They would kind of have to go on a run, but I think it is a good thing though that they get Watson back because he's definitely an upgrade from Brissett. And hopefully during this suspension, Watson's kind of learned how to deal with his off the field issues. So I think that's first and foremost for him as a person. But I don't know, they could make a run. They're 3 games back in the division, but I don't know. They could maybe sneak in the wild card if they go on a long winning streak and get some help.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I just for them, I don't know if 7 wins is out of it, but they're gonna have to go on a massive run, which maybe they can do. I mean, anything's possible when you have a great quarterback. So I agree with you there. It's all about what they do. As for the Bucs, again, just another game where they just did not get it done on offense. I feel like the sense of urgency is just not there with this team. I feel like every week I've been waiting for them to kind of take off like a spaceship, but they don't ever seem to do it.
Yeah, and good for them though. Yesterday, they kind of came out of nowhere with that win in overtime against Tampa Bay. I did not see that coming. I thought Tampa Bay kind of would right the ship a little bit, but no, Cleveland found a way. And I don't know. We talk about Tampa Bay just for a second. I know they've had a rocky year, but I don't know, 5-6, and they're still in the playoff hunt. I mean, that's just lucky enough to say that, but they just don't look good at all. I don't understand what the deal is with them. They're still winning their division, believe it or not, at 5-6, but I don't know where they go from here because they have some interesting games coming up, which they can win, but I don't know.
Yeah,
They're just not the same.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. And also too for them, every single team in the NFC South now below 500. So somebody's hosting a playoff game at some point. I guess we'll figure out who it is. Another team that I want to talk about from the AFC North who has played really good in the last couple of weeks. How about the Bengals? I mean, they are just slowly kind of just churning out wins. They don't have Jamar, but they find a way to get it done. 20-16 win over the Titans. And I think the thing that's most impressive to me, they hold Derrick Henry to 38 yards on the ground. That's terrific.
Yeah, and I don't remember who the Titans played recently, but one of their defenses that they played held them to a low amount of yards. Might have been the Broncos.
Yes,
I think it was the Broncos, and the Bengals did the same thing. I mean, that's the best case scenario when you're playing the Titans. If you can hold Derrick Henry to that kind of yardage, you're gonna have a great chance to win. And it wasn't an easy game for the Bengals to win, but they found a way, like you said, and they're starting to turn a corner. I know that you said earlier on the show a few weeks ago that they're kind of a team that it's kind of flying under the radar in the sense that they haven't really looked great, but they're kind of starting to win these games and their record's starting to improve. And last year we saw them make a late run, especially in January when they rode it all the way to the Super Bowl. And I feel like we're getting those vibes again. I feel like Joe Burrow is finally playing up to his caliber.
Yeah, no, he is. And honestly, it's kind of amazing too, because he's doing it without Joe Mixon and Jamar Chase, who are his number one options as far as
Yeah, you saw T. Higgins.
Higgins has had an explosion recently, and it's been nice to see. I think that for the Bengals, playing without Jamar is not the worst thing, because now when they come back, like they kind of know what T. Higgins can do well. Obviously, Jamar, we don't even need to say the impact he can have on the game. He's a very special player. But I mean, if this is a team, honestly, in the Bengals, I would not be surprised they make another run in the AFC. They feel dangerous to me, especially when they stop the run like this. I mean, this is a side of their defense we've really not seen.
Yeah, and they're right in the thick of it in the North now because they actually now have the same record as the Ravens, who dropped their game yesterday. So that head-to-head matchup later in the season is looming very large for the Bengals right now. So they're in a good spot. I like where the Bengals are right now. But I was going to talk about a surprise from yesterday, and this involved the New York Jets. They started Mike White. They made a change at QB. They benched Zach Wilson from his poor play, and they put in Mike White. And what do you know? He just balls out for 315 yards and 3 touchdowns, and they beat the Bears 31-10. And yeah, Jimmy, I know that Mike White is probably going to get the nod next week. I mean, there's doubt there.
He has to.
But I mean, if he keeps playing well, I don't know who they play next week. I forget who it is.
The Vikings.
So if he goes into Minnesota, obviously, if they win, I would think he's going to get the start again. But it's more so how he plays. Do you think he's has a chance to keep the job for the rest of the year?
Listen, I think if he can get through these next 2 games, because honestly, that looks like the hardest games. You have the Vikings, who personally, I don't think their defense is great. I've been saying that all season. I think that's kind of a place that they're a liability. And I thought the Jets honestly did a good job of just doing what was working on offense, whether it was running the ball, whether it was keeping Mike White in good situations and staying ahead of the chains, as we like to say. You know, he had a quick pass in the beginning of the game that was able to work out for a touchdown. And then it was also nice to see how he worked in Elijah Moore. We haven't seen Elijah Moore a lot this season for the Jets. Obviously, earlier this season, he did not want to be on the team anymore. And now he's having a huge role. And, you know, Mike White, that was probably the best performance we saw from the Jets offense in a while. And if you're a Jet fan, you have to be happy because he also incorporated your young receivers, not only Elijah Moore, but also Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson had 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, and I feel like every time Wilson got the ball, he was just wide open in space. And anytime you get your receiver out in space, they can make plays and get yards after the catch and stuff like that. yeah, I just felt like the Jets did a good job of sticking to their guns, and it was a big win for them too. They're coming off a tough loss in New England, but they righted the ship there, and now they're back at 7-4, and they're right in the thick of it again in the East. They're only a game back of Miami and Buffalo, and they have beaten both of those teams so far. So you're looking at the tiebreakers. Those tiebreakers are boding well for the Jets. They just have to keep winning to keep pace. Yeah, I'm trying to think of where do we go from here. I think a key game, and I'm not sure if we mentioned this before the show started, but Falcons Commanders is a huge game, I thought, for both teams coming in, and the Commanders won 19-13, but now Washington's 7-5. They actually hold the last wild card spot. So right now, if the playoffs start today, all 4 NFC East teams would make the playoffs, which is kind of crazy considering how bad the division's been historically the last few years. But this is a game I thought the Falcons should have had, just in the sense that it's the type of team that they should beat, because if they're gonna have a chance in the South, they have to win these types of games. And also for their wild card chances, they could have beaten Washington to get to 6-6, but now they're 2 back of Washington. But I don't know if you saw any of this game, Jimmy, Falcons Commanders, but I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Listen, another win for the Commanders, another close win too. It's just they just find a way to win these games. I don't think that they do anything that's that amazing. Like I said though, or like you said, running the ball is their key. It's their bread and butter. It's what they do well, and they're sticking with it. Brian Robinson obviously had a nice game, 105 yards, on 18 carries. And listen, you know one thing that I see a lot of from the Washington, they kick a lot of field goals. That's something that's got to change if they're going to be a playoff team. They got to start getting some touchdowns, because I just don't know. Listen, against the Falcons that might work, but when you're playing teams like the Eagles and the Cowboys and whoever else, you're gonna have your work cut out for you, and you're gonna have to score touchdowns. It's just the fact of what it is. I don't know if you have anything else you want to add to that game, but I would love to talk about the Ravens and the Jaguars.
No, I just think it was a good win for the Commanders. But let's go into the Ravens Jags, because that ending was wild.
Yeah, it was a insane ending. So the Ravens lose to the Jaguars 27-28 in Jacksonville. The game was delayed actually at the start. But story again for the Ravens, just not being able to get into the end zone on offense. They weren't able to get into the end zone last week against the Panthers. And the same kind of thing happened, except for in the fourth quarter, because in the third quarter, it was 12-10. That was our score as we began the fourth quarter. Now, then the Ravens were able to get in, but the problem is Jacksonville responded. I mean, Trevor Lawrence had probably his best game in a Jaguars uniform. I mean, the drive at the end for the Jaguars kind of just says it all. I mean, there's about 2 minutes left, and they have no timeouts, and they find a way to get down the field. That's outstanding from Trevor Lawrence too. I mean, really just a beautiful drive. And he has 3 touchdown passes. I mean, there were people who were like, I felt like there were conversations this offseason. Is Trevor Lawrence really that good? Well, if he plays like this every week, and listen, that's a good Ravens team too. Like, I know they're not great in terms of holding the leads on defense, but they've made some moves and they've gotten more healthy. And I don't think that this is the same problem with the Ravens that they had earlier in the season, because their defense is much improved. Whereas, now, like, then they kind of had some problems, but this now, I think they have a much better defense. So I thought this was more about, just the way that Trevor Lawrence played. And you know what, too? Jacksonville didn't even run the ball that well. That's kind of a problem for them, too, because they've been so reliant on the run. But I was really impressed with Trevor Lawrence. And I want to give a shout out, actually, to Doug P., because I think if you would have hired any other coach, I don't know if you would be seeing this improvement in Trevor Lawrence. That's just my honest opinion. Coaching matters in the NFL.
Oh, it does. And he balled out yesterday, just first and foremost. I feel like this is the type of game that we've been waiting for him. And I'm surprised that we haven't really seen it on multiple occasions yet, but I think he's really close to doing that. But yeah, I think it was a great call to go for 2. I mean, why not try to end it? I know that they were 3-7. They're not really playing for much. They're just playing to try to improve the team, but I thought it was a great call to go for 2.
Yeah,
the play call was great too.
Yeah, I liked it.
I forget who caught the 2-pointer. Do you remember who it was?
The 2-pointer was caught by, I'm pretty sure it was Zay?
Zay Jones.
It was Zay Jones, yes.
Yeah, the call was amazing. I mean, he was wide open, cutting across the.
I like the play that they ran to Marvin Jones to get the touchdown.
Right.
That was pretty nice.
I was going to bring that up. Do you think that should have been upheld? Because there's a lot of
He
controversy.
got 2 points of his body down. He got his foot and he got his shin. I don't understand.
So I think so too. but I just feel like a lot of people I talk to are like, no, it's not a catch.
It doesn't have to be 2 feet. It just has to be 2 points of the body. I think that people just don't know the rules. Learn the rules. Shout out Big Blake Bortles, the Jaguars legend, as he would say. Learn the rules. Anything else you want to add about the Ravens? Obviously, for the Ravens,
Just
now,
a tough one.
they're tied with the
Blow,
Bengals,
yeah.
so they really have to get it together. Obviously, we'll talk about who they're playing in just a minute here.
Just say, yeah, your team's coming here next week.
Yeah. We could talk more about that on Friday, but they're going to be playing the Broncos, and that'll be interesting. I'll be in the house for that one, so I'm sure that'll be just a great time. As for the Broncos themselves, I guess the time has officially come to talk about the dumpster fire that was the Broncos versus Panthers yesterday. Jeff, do you want to set the scene for everybody?
So the Broncos are in Carolina. They take on the Panthers, and unfortunately for the Broncos nation, they did not come away with a win.
Country.
Yes, sorry, I misspoke there, but they lost 23-10, and felt like a game that they could have won because
the Panthers just aren't good. How about that?
They're not a good team, and I thought the Broncos had enough on offense where they could have put up points to win, and they unfortunately did not. And I don't know. I'll just give you the floor because I feel like you have a lot more to say about this game than I do.
Well,
so go ahead.
I thought last week was the low point, right? Because they lose to the Raiders, they lose to Josh McDaniels, who literally lost to a guy who came off his couch the week before, and in overtime, mind you, with some coaching errors. But this week was so much more dysfunctional, I thought, than last week. At least last week they were competitive. This was a complete no-show. The offense just cannot do anything. It's an embarrassment. I don't know how. Russell Wilson threw his 300th touchdown pass yesterday. It's supposed to be a happy day. There was nothing happy about that game yesterday. I mean, what an awful game it was to watch. Let's start with the offense. They run the ball okay, but they're not consistent enough with it. Like Latavius Murray gets the ball for 92 yards on the ground, but he only got it 13 times. Like you got to be more consistent. Chef Russell had 50-something yards or 55 yards at halftime. That's a disgrace. Just a complete disgrace. There's no way you could be paying a quarterback almost $250 million to have 55 yards at halftime. I'm sorry, that's just not going to cut it. And I know that nobody else is going to want to hear this, but I'm ready to say it. Russell is playing for his job. He's playing for his job next year because I'm sorry, it's a $39 million dead cap hit. At some point, you have to think about it. Next year, you're getting your pick back. Why not just tank and get a new quarterback? You're not going anywhere without a quarterback anyway. We know that there's going to be Caleb Williams out there, right? I mean, it has to be up for discussion about maybe just tearing this thing down and doing the full rebuild, because when the highest paid player on your team is also your worst player on the team, that's a problem. I mean,
it's crazy because I never thought we would have this conversation.
I didn't think so either, but unfortunately we are, and I think we need to accept that Russell is just nowhere close to what he was in Seattle. Age has hit him like a truck.
And I really thought that wasn't really the issue. I just thought he had a subpar season, and missing half the games last season didn't really help that either. But I thought he would come back this year just kind of refreshed, but I don't know. The play just hasn't been there.
And also, you know what makes it worse? It's like, it's not just him. Like, it's him, it's injuries. Like, we have a lot of guys out. Like, there's no secret about that. There's guys out on the offensive line. There's guys out on defense. But you can't make excuses. Or there's also skill players out. Can't make excuses about that, though. That's not what this is. Because at the same time as you have all these injuries, that's when you need your star players to step up. That's when you need your coaching to step up. We've already seen Nathaniel Hackett. He's incompetent. Honest question, Jeff. Do you think he is the worst NFL coach you have ever seen?
I don't know. I would have to think about that.
He's
definitely in the
might
conversation.
actually be the worst NFL coach in our lifetime.
I haven't watched too many full Broncos games since probably week 3 or week 4. So you definitely would have more of a say than I do. But I don't know. Just based on what I've heard from you and from others, it just sounds like he's not, I don't know, managing the game properly.
No,
I don't know about the play calling. The play calling is another discussion.
He's just so in over his head. Like, it's just not, he's just not meant to be a head coach. He's just not meant to be a head coach.
And I don't know if he's been a coach before, a head coach. Do you know if he's ever been head coach?
No, he's not. He's never been a head coach. And he's also never, like, been successful either. Like his most successful thing is being the OC for the Jaguars with Bortles, because he called the plays. He didn't even call the plays in Green Bay when he was with Rodgers. So I don't know how we could be giving him credit for that.
Like, do I think he's gonna get the boot? Maybe.
Oh no, he has to get the boot. It's not even close. The worst
Because
part is
yeah.
there's 6 games left in the season. There's 6 games I still have to watch of this garbage. Like Russell Wilson, listen, I don't even know where you go from here. It's up. You can't bench the guy because he's literally like got the keys to the franchise right now, and he's our highest paid player. But at the same time, he's just so bad. And I just have so many questions too about like our approach to the game. Like the coaching is just not there either.
Like, do you think if
I think-
somehow they go 3-3 and down the stretch, does that
No.
change your opinion
No.
at all?
No.
No,
I don't think that they can win a single game this season.
you don't think so?
No, I really don't. I think okay, maybe the Rams. That might be the only team they can beat. They play the Rams on Christmas Day. That's a national.
I think they
game.
could beat the. And coming into the year, I remember we talked about this last year, but that was gonna be like a blockbuster game, Christmas Day. That was gonna be a great game. The
No.
Super Bowl champs against the Broncos are probably gonna be a playoff team, but
Yeah, now.
they could beat the Cardinals. I think the Cardinals are a beatable team.
Yeah, maybe. But
Right.
here's the thing too, that it looked like
So
they,
Kansas City twice.
they gave up some of the most points they've given up all season. They gave up 23 to an offense that's not even good. So I think the question is there, has the team quit on Hackett? Because it certainly looks like it.
Yeah, I just don't know where they go from here.
There's literally no place to go from here because listen, they have a first round pick this year in the San Francisco pick. I wouldn't even take a player. I would just trade back for more picks because you're going to have to rebuild. There's just so many things that I think are wrong. It stinks because they've been doing this rebuild for quite a few years. They drafted some players that we thought were really going to be good players, and some of them have been good. You know, Surtain looks nice, like a nice player, but you expected a little bit more out of Judy, I think, in his first couple of years. It's also unfortunate that you make a trade for a quarterback who just simply has not delivered his end of the bargain. It's just that simple. Russ is not delivering his end of the bargain. I mean, I don't know how else to explain it like that.
Well, hopefully for your sake that you'll see him in person Sunday, and I will too, but hopefully he'll right the ship and hopefully put up a good performance against the Ravens. We'll
Yeah, I mean, listen, the Ravens don't seem like they're in the best place either, but at least their offense is putting up points. And the Broncos just also never seem to do well when they come to the East Coast. So
maybe I'll bring some luck because the Ravens have not done well when I've watched them in person. So we'll see. We'll see.
interesting. Yeah, we will see. Want to take a quick break and then come back?
Yeah, we'll have some NFL talk after the break. We have some games that we have not discussed yet that I think that deserve some discussion, but we'll talk about that and some more topics coming up. Stay with us. We'll be right back after this short break. Welcome back to WLOI, Loyola Radio, streaming online at WLOI.org and Campus TV channel 111.1. This is After the Whistle with Jeffrey Bazzi and Jimmy Cody. We're going to pick up right back where we left off before the break, talking some NFL Week 12 games. And Jimmy, I'm going to ask you before, actually, we talked about the NFL. Jose Abreu signed with the Houston Astros, and I just think the rich get richer. So
Yeah.
do you have any thoughts about that?
Listen, obviously it was nice that we locked up Anthony Rizzo and he couldn't go to the Astros because they said they were looking for a first baseman. They get one here with Jose Abreu, but he also will probably be a DH, I assume, for them too. So he'll kind of, platoon that role. Listen, he's somebody who can hit for power, but I don't think he's as scary as he was a couple of years ago. So I don't think that's going to be what pushes the Astros over the edge. Mainly because they already had a good roster. Like
They just won the whole thing.
Yeah, they just won the whole thing. So I mean, I literally all the same concerns I had before about the Astros, I still have. Nothing has changed.
It might be good for that position specifically, just because Yuli Gurriel is getting up there in age, so maybe he's the future. Abreu, that is, but yeah, I definitely agree. He's not what he used to be, but he's still a guy that can really hit, and I think that's a plus, especially when you have a lot of hitters across the lineup, which they do. So, yeah, good pickup for the Stros. But yeah, let's get back to the NFL, like we said, and a fun one out in the desert yesterday. The Chargers and the Cardinals, and these are two teams somewhat in opposite directions. The Chargers are a team that was supposed to be somewhat of a contender this year. I mean, they have a great offense on paper, and the defense was supposed to be better.
They have great players.
Yes,
Their offensive
and
lines.
they're only 6-5. And then you flip it to the Cardinals, everything's just going wrong for them. And we've both been advocates for Cliff Kingsbury not having his job
Yeah, and that's got to be true
for the
again
foreseeable
today.
future. And I think this is just another game where it proves that point. And I thought it was a great job by Brandon Staley, the Chargers coach, to go for two, because he's a guy that is not afraid to go for fourth downs and go for two for the win. And this just showed it again yesterday. So what do you think about coaches going for two at the end to win? Do you like it? Because I love it.
I like it if you got the offense. If you got the dogs for it and you think you're capable, you should have trust in your players. Honestly, when you have Justin Herbert as your quarterback, I think that's a move you got to make. You need the kid to execute, and he gets it done. And
Yeah.
that's not the first time they've done that. Like, they've been plenty aggressive. That's just their style.
Yeah. And I think that's the type of game that they have to win moving forward, because there's a lot of games this year. I feel like the Chargers could have won and they just didn't. But they're still in the race at 6-5. But how about the game in Seattle? The Raiders and the Seahawks, a little bit of a shootout up there in Seattle. The Raiders come away with the win, 40-34 in overtime. And I remember you were saying before this game over the weekend that don't be surprised. I think the Raiders can maybe win, and they did it.
Yeah, here's the one reason that I thought that. Just because I felt like the Seahawks defense has been getting lucky lately. I think a lot of people have been taking this soft approach to running the ball. And you know what? Not only can you run the ball against them, because Josh Jacobs certainly did that, you can also get them in the spots at the corners. Listen, Devontae Adams had a nice game. That's what you expect out of him. But Derek Carr had a pretty good game, in my opinion, for what he's accustomed to. Now, obviously, he had the 2 picks, and that's a disaster. But he still was able to throw for 3
Also,
touchdown
considering
passes.
he actually was injured early in the first
He
quarter,
was.
and to come back from that was pretty good on his part.
I mean, the story here, though, has to be just the game Josh Jacobs had. 229 on the ground, 74 through the air.
He had the same amount of receiving yards actually as Devontae Adams, believe it
Yeah.
or not. Yeah, he was just running wild yesterday in Seattle, and Seahawks just didn't have an answer for him. I mean, he was averaging 7 yards a carry, about 7 yards a carry, I should say, on the ground, and averaging 12.3 yards through the air.
Yeah.
He just did it all.
Yeah, he did it all. They relied big on him, and he was able to come through. I mean, definitely an awesome performance for Josh Jacobs, who, by the way, will be a free agent after this season.
Oh, I wonder who's going to be in his
There's gonna be a
market.
lot of
That's
running
huge.
backs that are going to be free agents.
Yeah, you gotta-
Sanders?
yeah, it might be the year of the running back for free agents. Who knows?
Nah.
Tough one for Seattle.
Pollard, too. Pollard will be one.
Yeah, they were 6-3. Now they're 6-5.
Yeah,
and
Seattle.
they also lost control of first place. San Francisco is now in first place in the West, and they actually play head to head coming up in a few
Yeah.
weeks. But
Seattle's lucky, though,
they're
because their
trending down.
next 2 games are the Rams and the Panthers. Those are games they got to win.
Yes, and the plus thing for them is that they have a lot of home games left. They have a stretch at the end where they play 4 or 5 in Seattle after next week. So that definitely sounds good on paper. So hopefully they can take advantage of that with the 12s up there. But let's go to Sunday Night Football between the Green Bay Packers and Philadelphia Eagles. And this was a shootout as well. We just talked about a shootout. This is another shootout with the Eagles winning 40-33, and kind of a bizarre start to the game, especially early on. The Eagles jump out 13-0 with 2 touchdowns with the missed PAT in there, the reason why that was 13. And then Green Bay comes right back and they take the lead, and then Philly takes the lead. It was a back and forth seesaw type of game, and then Philly took a little bit of control in the middle, and then Green Bay actually made it interesting. And the story here, and we were talking about this last night because we were watching the game together, but Jordan Love was replacing Aaron Rodgers due to Rodgers' injury, and you liked what you saw from Jordan Love.
I did. I really liked the way that Jordan Love played. I think you got to give this kid a chance. If you want my honest opinion, I thought he looked better out there than Rodgers did.
I mean, yeah, for the game itself, I thought he came in kind of did what was asked of him, and he made a lot of throws. He made 6 throws and only had 3 completions.
Yeah, and he had a touchdown pass, and then the other time they took it out of his hands and they kicked a field goal. So he had 2 scoring drives. He had 13 points. That's more in one quarter than Rodgers was able to put up in any singular quarter himself.
Right, and then I was just going to mention the yards per completion. He averaged 12.6 yards per throw
And
that
listen,
he completed.
You know what? It didn't seem like he had as much of a I feel like the whole thing about the Packers, there's no chemistry. There's no chemistry. Yeah. Maybe if Rodgers showed up to practice all season, there'd be some chemistry. Jordan Love who was there, seems to have plenty of chemistry with the guys that are going on. I'm sorry, LaFleur has any decency. He just says, Aaron, you need to shut it down and we need to play this kid. There's 5 games. Just give him the chance.
And he was firing balls over the middle of the field, and I felt like Rodgers didn't do that as much.
No, not at all. Rogers always looking at the stupid screens on the RPOs. Again, this was more granted of a passing situation, so the Eagles aren't going to play like press man trying to just defend a guy from getting the ball at all. They're playing with a lead and they're just trying to keep them out of the end zone. And that was what they were able to do on the one drive. However, I still thought he played good. It was a close game, and he actually made it a game at the end. So I think it's honestly fair that you give Jordan Love a shot because Rodgers, if he's banged up and he's the franchise like you think he is, there's just no sense. And also, if Jordan Love is good and he's better for your team, you gotta play him.
Yeah, I mean, they drafted him in the first round, I would think, for a reason.
Mhm.
Now it got a lot of backlash just because they had Rodgers at the time, and they clearly needed to get him more help with Devontae Adams being on the team at the time, and they didn't do that. But they clearly saw something in Love, and I think he showed a little bit of what he can do last night. Now on the Eagles side, I felt like the defense, in response to the quarterback play from Green Bay, did not have a great night at all. I felt like there was a lot of big chunk plays that they gave up, especially over the middle of the field. I thought that touchdown that Jordan Love threw at the end, I think it was Jordan Love, where I think it was Christian Watson caught it in the middle of the field and just basically took off from midfield
Yeah, it
all
was
the way.
63 yards.
I mean, that is unexcusable, I think, for the Eagles defense. They just let him literally run down the sideline with no one really threatening to tackle him. And I just thought there were a lot of plays like that last night where they were getting crushed over the middle. Even when Rodgers was playing in the early part of the game and through the majority part of the game, I just felt like down the middle, the Eagles were getting crushed, especially in their secondary.
Mhm.
And I guess it didn't help that CJ Gardner Johnson was injured, but I really think just as a collective unit, they didn't really do a good job with that. And I think they didn't really do a good job stopping AJ Dillon either. Now, I thought they limited Aaron Jones pretty well, but AJ Dillon still had a pretty good night. Even though only 64 yards, he averaged 8 yards a carry. And I felt like a lot of those runs are very timely to keep the Packers in it. But I think once again, the run D is still the concern for the Eagles D. And the pass D could be a little bit better. I think that was the first time in a little bit where the pass D was not great. I think Taylor Heineke kind of caused some problems a few weeks ago, but the first time was a little bit more noticeable than before. But yeah, I just thought the offense again, just another nice day for Hurts.
Yeah,
especially running the ball.
Hurts played well. Hurts played well, especially when it came to running the ball on the ground. I thought he was like a constant for the team. And I didn't really think that the players around him played that great. AJ with the fumble.
Yeah, 2 weeks
The offensive line was not as great as it usually is.
No, and I think it was good at times, but for the majority of the game it really wasn't, because I feel like a lot of the runs that the Eagles had were Hurts scrambling or design runs where Hurts is not really running up the middle, he's kind of running around the O-line, but they'll have to fix that moving forward because this is a big game for the Eagles to get because their December is tough. They got the Titans and the Giants the next 2 weeks, so those are some tough games.
Yeah, we'll see what happens going forward for the Eagles to get to 10 wins. Really quickly, Jeff, Pittsburgh and Indianapolis tonight in Indianapolis. Monday Night Football, ESPN. Indianapolis is a 2.5-point favorite at home. Really quickly, I think that Kenny Pickett just had his best game, so I'm looking for him to continue on that. That's what I'm looking for. And also, I'm interested to see what the Steelers' defense does when they're going up against one of the best running backs in the NFL. He's obviously not having the season we hoped, but he's still very talented when he plays his best.
And that is Jonathan Taylor, who you're talking about. And on the Colts side, is this new Jeff Saturday vibe going to continue? Because they looked great in their first game. They won on the road in Vegas. And even last week, I felt like they actually should have beaten the Eagles. They lost by 1 just because they gave up a late touchdown. But I feel like they just are a different team. And I feel like Matt Ryan is a little rejuvenated after being benched for that 1 week. But I do agree with you about Kenny Pickett. I feel like he's starting to gain a little more confidence. And actually, this is going to be kind of a fun one tonight. I know these teams aren't really eye-popping on paper, but I think this could be a really fun game to watch.
You have a pick?
I'm going to go with the Colts.
I'm going to go with the Steelers.
It's really tough. And neither one of these teams is really threatening for a playoff spot. The Colts are a little bit closer.
Colts are still in the hunt.
They are. They're
barely, just barely.
2-3 games out. I don't know what the math is because they have a tie. So they're kind of in it. They kind of need this game if they want to have a shot. But yeah, I think this is gonna go down to the wire. I
Yeah,
really do.
Me too. Me too. All right, Jeff. Let's talk about some World Cup action, shall we?
Yeah, so obviously the one team that we're all following and the team that we all care about is the US men's national team. And over I almost said Christmas break. Wow, I'm really jumping the gun
Yeah,
here.
really jumping the gun.
Over Thanksgiving break. Yeah, they're both holidays. Over Thanksgiving break, the US team took on England. And for a 0-0 scoreless draw, I thought it was a very exciting game. Jimmy, I'm sure you watched the game as well, but I don't know any observations because obviously the story here was the US having so many chances and just unfortunately unable to find the back of the net.
Yeah, I mean, I thought like we had chances. I thought like we had a lot of corner kicks that gave us some opportunities. Um, the only thing that I can say that was a negative is that. I mean, I felt like our defense was good. I felt like we made the situational plays defensively when we needed to. I felt like we kind of did a good job whenever Britain really threatened. We did a pretty good job of stopping him. I'm sorry, England, not Britain, whatever the heck they are. From there. So yeah, England I thought was obviously they're a pretty good team. They have some good players, obviously like Harry Kane and Raheem Sterling and whatnot. But we were a little disrespected in this game, and I thought like we showed that we can kind of hang with the big boys.
We definitely did, and I felt like there were just so many chances. I just felt like every time we got a chance, we're like, "Oh my god, when are we going to score?" And I was just surprised because we just kept getting these chances that I didn't think we were going to get, but I thought we really earned them. And for not having the ball the majority of the game, because England really crushed us in the possession game, but I just felt like we made the most of our chances, and I felt like England's chances were not very good. I felt like the US definitely had the better chances of the two teams. But I think getting a draw there was huge because they put themselves in position to have to win tomorrow against Iran.
Just
So
that simple. You just have to beat Iran.
I think coming into the game, obviously we know that the US has to score a goal. And I'm not sure if you dive too deep into the stats here with the players, but if there's one guy you would think would be Christian Pulisic, who'd be the guy that can really make a magical moment happen. But do you think there's anyone else that can do it?
We only have one goal.
Right, it was from Tim Weah in the first game.
Tim Weah off the assist from Pulisic. So, listen, in the big games, where you need people to step up, it comes down to your stars, right? Like you need people to make a play, right? The Cavs don't win that championship with a 3-1 comeback without Kyrie Irving and LeBron stepping up to the plate. So we need our star, which is Pulisic, to step up and make some plays. Also, you know who I thought was really good in the England game that I did not get to mention? The goalie. I thought our goalie played really good.
Turner, yes.
Yeah, I thought
Matt
he did
Turner.
really good.
Yeah, no, he was definitely he's locked in. I thought the first game we didn't really know what to expect because he's like kind of a new goalie that no one really.
It was also in a goalie battle coming into the World Cup.
Yes, that is true. They had a tough time trying to figure out who would be the number one goalie, but I think Berhalter made a good choice with Turner. And another guy I thought played really well that we didn't mention was Weston McKennie, one of the midfielders. He had a really good day, I thought, and he actually had two notable chances to score, and unfortunately he missed the net on both of them. But I think that's the type of guy that can really dictate the pace in the middle of the field. And I think the key for the US tomorrow is, I think if we're gonna have to score, it's got to be the guys up top. It's got to be Tim Weah, Christian Pulisic. I think other guys that don't even start can have an impact, such as Gio Reyna and Brendan Aronson. I think those are guys that if they come into the game in the 60th, 70th minute, they can really put some balls on net, and I think that's going to be the key.
Really quick, Jeff, I want to bring up a college football question for you. What were your thoughts on Michigan, Ohio State this weekend? Michigan gets the win 45-23 at the Horseshoe.
I was shocked. I'll just start there. I was completely shocked. I thought Ohio State was going to win just in the sense that they were going to get payback. I thought they just had a better offense, but no, Michigan kind of gave them a taste of their own medicine, hanging 45 on Ohio State. And moving forward, we know that the playoff will be decided on Sunday when the official top four comes out, but I think Michigan is safe to say that they're probably in, unless they get crushed by Purdue, but I really don't see that happening.
Yeah, I mean, I would think that Michigan.
And then for Ohio State, I guess they still have a chance because even though they don't have a game left, I think if certain dominoes fall their way somehow, I think it's a small chance to get in. But if certain dominoes fall their way, I think they could get in. But I don't know. I don't think they're going to get in anyway. Also, I just kind of think on my phone.
Hugh Freeze?
Hugh Freeze been hired by the Auburn Tigers. That's big news.
That is big news. Hugh Freeze is back in the SEC, so it's gonna be interesting to see how he does. Obviously he was at Liberty, but he was, pretty good when he was at Ole Miss. They were known for their recruiting, especially. They just could never win the big games. But
Yes.
we'll see how he does at Auburn.
Yeah, I think
It's a much different game right now than when he was there because they had obviously some allegations about like guys being paid and whatnot. But now it's the NIL NCAA. So this is a completely different environment than what it was before. So, we'll see. We'll see how he can make it in the SEC with the NIL. I mean, honestly, I think he's a good coach.
I do too.
I thought he was a good coach. Obviously, what happened was there's a lot of things going on at Ole Miss, and he just had to go, unfortunately. But at the same time, if he does bad, this is a guy who's kind of has a controversial track record. If this hire fails, whoever hired him, the AD, I think is going to be out too because that's a big leap of faith to hire Hugh Freeze.
It is. But I think it's a good move though for Auburn because they're kind of a team and program that's kind of not stuck in neutral, but they haven't really done much recently. And
I feel like ever since that second time they were in the national championship, they just have never been the same.
yeah,
The lucky
obviously
season-
they've moved on from Gus Malzahn, but
That was the lucky season when they got like all those wins. Like they got the one where it hit off the Georgia player, and then they had the kick six. I mean, it felt like since then they have
it's been
not.
ages ago.
Yeah, it's been a while. And Auburn, obviously, when you're competing with Alabama directly, it's going to be very tough, and it's going to be a huge job for Hugh Freeze. So
Yes.
we'll see how he does.
Yeah, we can talk more about the championship slate this weekend because we could talk about that on Friday. But I guess going into it, I think Georgia and Michigan are probably locks to make the CFP just because worst case scenario, if they both lose, I just don't think they would slide far enough to go out of the top four.
No, I think if Michigan loses, they're out.
So I think so
I think if you
too.
lose to Purdue, I think you're out.
Yes, I think it's a different case for Georgia just because they're playing LSU, who is in that 5 slot right now. And we do still have the CFP rankings who come out tomorrow night. These are the AP poll rankings that
What do you think about Ohio State? So say there's funny business. Can you make any case for them? Because me personally, I cannot.
I can't just because they don't have a chance to win their conference title. And you look at the teams ahead of them, like TCU and USC.
Well, what if they lose? What if USC and TCU lose?
So I was
there's so much craziness.
So I was gonna bring that up. The thing with TCU is that they would be a one-loss team, hypothetically, if they were to lose to Kansas State, but they do have a decent resume because they've beaten ranked teams like Texas and Oklahoma and Kansas and Kansas State.
Like, come on.
It's
that's
TCU
not-
at the same
yeah.
time, but the
It's
other
the Big
team
12,
I
that's
mentioned,
the problem.
right, and I mentioned USC as the other team. They have one loss, I believe it was to Utah, who ironically they're playing again for the Pac-12 title. So
Yeah,
you kind of have to look at their resume and how they've played.
in Vegas.
They would be, yeah, that would be a fun game. They'd be a really fun team to watch, I think, if they made the top 4 USC.
Caleb Williams is a fantastic player at quarterback. I really enjoy watching this kid. He's having a great season, and he'll be back next year in college.
Right.
He's only a sophomore.
And I don't want to jump the gun too far, but hypothetically, if it was a 1v4 matchup with Georgia and USC, I think USC would have a shot. And I know that their defense is not good at all.
No, their defense is bad.
I think Caleb Williams and the offense have enough firepower they can keep up with the Georgia offense. Honestly, I think they have a better offense than Georgia, but that Georgia D is just something else.
Yeah, that would be a great matchup to see a awesome offense against a awesome defense.
And no discredit to the Georgia offense. The Georgia offense is really good. Stetson Bennett is no joke, as we've seen over the last few years. But thank you all for listening to the show today. We'll be back on Friday previewing the college football championship slate, and let's be talking some more World Cup and NFL. So we'll see you Friday. Have a great week.